Lesson 5. Welcome back. For this lesson, we want to examine the importance of the Sabbath. In our last lesson, we touched on some principles related to the Sabbath and the Ten Commandments. Why did God make the Sabbath, and what is its purpose in our lives today? Let's go back to the very beginning to find out about the origin of the Sabbath. Some people are convinced that the Sabbath was made for Jews. In their minds, the Sabbath is a Jewish institution. They trace its origins to the formation of the Jewish nation. But what does the Bible say about the origins of the Sabbath? Genesis 2 and 3 give us the origin of the Sabbath. By the seventh day, God had finished the work He had been doing. So on the seventh day, He rested from all His work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it He rested from all the work of creating that He had done. The Sabbath was made at creation before there was any sin. Thus, the Sabbath is not an accommodation to sin, nor is it an accommodation to the curse of sin expressed in strenuous labor. Before men worked a day, God created the Sabbath. Men rested before He worked. As an analogy, before you use your new cell phones, it is recommended that you fully charge its batteries. If you are too anxious using your cell phone for the first time without having a full charged battery, that would mean that you would have severely compromised the life cycle and effectiveness of the battery. But if the battery was fully charged before first use, you could enjoy years of problem-free operation. The Sabbath functions in a similar way. Before men worked, He rested. God created man, and then He rested man for a whole day of spiritual rest, recharging. Only then was man ready to embark on more temporal responsibilities of labor. Rest is so important. Spiritual rest and recharge. That is why the Lord created it before men even started working. Scripture tells us which day is the Sabbath. The Sabbath is the seventh day of the week. On this day, God rested. God made it holy. God sanctified it, and God blessed it. There is no other day than the confluence of blessing. Sanctification and rest are attached too. Exodus 20:8-11 says, "Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your works. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but He rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy." When God makes something holy, God sets it apart for special purposes. Holy articles aren't worn in secular places. God says, you don't use the Sabbath for secular purposes, but rather for holy uses. What could be holier use of time than spending time in communication with our Creator? It is a day full of reconnection with our Creator. What shall be our attitude towards the Sabbath? Isaiah 58:13 and 14 says, "If you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath and from doing as you please on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's holy day honorable, and if you honor it by not going your own way and not doing as you please or speaking idle words, then you will find your joy in the Lord, and I will cause you to ride in triumph on the heights of the land and to feast on the inheritance of your father Jacob, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Don't trample on it. Don't disrespect it. Don't step on it. This is not the day to do your own thing. It is a day for revitalizing your relationship with God. It is not a day for idle gesturing. A wedding is a focused day, but it is a celebratory focused day. Whatever you may say at a wedding, you want to make sure that it adds to the celebration. This is the same attitude we should have about the Sabbath. It is a celebration, but it has to be focused on God, what He has done and not ourselves. When we keep the Sabbath, we are actually following in the footsteps of Jesus. Many would be surprised to learn that Jesus' custom was actually to worship on the Sabbath. Luke 4:14-16 says, Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit, and news about Him spread throughout the whole countryside. He was teaching in their synagogues, and everyone praised Him. He went to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day, He went into the synagogue. As was His custom, He stood up and read. Jesus went back home, and the phrase, as was His custom, is very significant. It points to the fact that Sabbath keeping was a practice Jesus followed on a regular basis. This is what He did consistently. We know that on that particular day, Jesus read from the scroll of Isaiah that spoke of God's anointing on His life's work and ministry. The Sabbath was an important feature in the ministry of Jesus. His custom was to worship, to teach, and to heal on the Sabbath. On the Sabbath, He recharged His connection with God. The Sabbath is a human institution. Before there was a Jew or an Israelite, the Sabbath was in existence. It predates the establishment of the nation of Israel. This is the testimony of the scriptures from Genesis to Revelation. Look at Mark 2:27. Then He said to them, the Sabbath was made for men, not men for the Sabbath. Jesus says that the Sabbath was made for men. The Greek word used here is anthropos, and it is a word at the root of anthropology, which is the study of humanity. The Sabbath was made for anthropos, for humanity. It is a human institution, but it is not of human origin, but rather made for human benefit. The legalistic way of viewing it borders on worship of the Sabbath. We clock in and clock out. But in love, God says the Sabbath is for your benefit. It is a time to spiritually recharge your batteries, for you to be regenerated. It is a time for you to focus on worship as the most important component of life. The Sabbath is for humanity's benefit.